An orphan shared his lunch with a stray dog, never imagining it would lead him to his birth parents. The simple act of kindness, performed on a bitter December afternoon, was nothing extraordinary to 12-year-old Elijah Morgan. Just another moment in a life defined by absence and making do. The wind cut through his thin jacket as he huddled against the brick wall of St. Catherine's Home for Children, the sandwich in his hands representing half his daily allotment. His stomach protested with a low growl as he tore the bread into smaller pieces, but the skinny brown dog watching him with liquid eyes seemed to need it more. "Here you go, boy," Elijah whispered, his breath forming clouds in the winter air. "Don't tell Mrs. Winters. She says feeding strays just makes more of them." The dog crept forward, ribs visible beneath matted fur, accepting the offering with gentle teeth. Something in the careful way it took the food, as if understanding the sacrifice, made Elijah's throat tighten. Kindness was a luxury at St. Catherine's, not because the staff were cruel, but because resources stretched thin across 37 children with nowhere else to go. Elijah had learned to live with the constant hollow feeling, both in his stomach and deeper inside, where memories of a family should have been. "You need a name," he decided, reaching out slowly to touch the dog's head. His fingers met warm fur, surprisingly soft beneath the dirt. "How about Scout? You look like you've been on a long journey." Scout's tail wagged tentatively, then with growing confidence as Elijah continued stroking his head. For the first time in weeks, Elijah smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes, not the polite mask he wore for potential adopters who inevitably chose younger children. "Morgan! Inside now?" Mrs. Winter's voice shattered the moment. "Study hour starts in 5 minutes." The dog flinched, backing away as Elijah reluctantly stood. "Come back tomorrow," he whispered. "I'll save you something, I promise." That evening, as snowflakes began drifting past the dormitory windows, Elijah lay awake in his narrow bed, listening to the rhythmic breathing of 5 other boys. His mind wasn't on tomorrow's math test or even the gnawing hunger from his half-eaten lunch. Instead, he pictured Scout, wondering where the dog would sleep in the gathering storm. Morning arrived with 8 inches of snow blanketing the city and an unusual announcement. Classes canceled due to weather. The rare freedom sent most children into the recreation room, but Elijah slipped outside the moment Mrs. Winters was distracted. 2 breakfast sausages wrapped in a napkin clutched inside his pocket. "Scout?" he called softly, trudging through untouched snow behind the building. "Scout!" No response came except the muffled silence of a world transformed white. His shoulders slumped as he circled the perimeter twice more before reluctantly heading back inside. He nearly missed it, a slight indentation beneath the wooden storage shed and the barely audible whimper. Dropping to his knees, Elijah peered into the darkness to find Scout curled into a tight ball, shivering violently. "Hey, buddy!" Elijah's voice cracked with relief. He extended his hand with the sausages, but the dog made no move to take them. "Come on, you must be hungry." When Scout still didn't respond, Elijah felt a flutter of panic. Something was wrong. Without thinking of consequences, he reached into the small space and gently pulled the dog out. Scout weighed almost nothing, a bundle of bones and wet fur that trembled against Elijah's chest. "You're coming inside," he decided, zipping the dog partially inside his jacket. "Just until you're warm." Sneaking a dog into St. Catherine's would normally be impossible, but the snow day created perfect chaos. Staff managing 37 stir-crazy children, everyone confined indoors. Elijah made it to the laundry room undetected, creating a nest of clean towels behind the industrial dryers where warmth poured from vents. "Just rest," he whispered, stroking Scout's head. "I'll figure something out." For 3 days, Elijah maintained his secret, bringing food scraps and water to the laundry room between classes and chores. Scout grew stronger, more alert, his eyes following Elijah with unmistakable devotion. It became the brightest spot in Elijah's life, having someone, even a dog, look at him that way. On the 4th morning, disaster struck. "Elijah Morgan," Mrs. Winter's voice echoed through the hallway outside the laundry room. "I know you're in there, and I know what you've been hiding." His heart plummeted as the door swung open. Mrs. Winters stood framed in the doorway, her usually tight bun slightly askew, suggesting she'd been searching for some time. "Mrs. Winters, I can explain," Elijah began, stepping protectively in front of the dryers. "Move aside, young man." Her voice held no room for argument. Elijah reluctantly stepped away, revealing Scout, who wagged his tail hopefully at the newcomer. To Elijah's surprise, Mrs. Winters' expression shifted from stern disapproval to something softer, more complicated. "This can't continue, Elijah," she said quietly. You know the rules. He was dying, Elijah said, fighting tears. It was snowing, and he had nowhere to go. I couldn't just... I understand, she interrupted, and for once Elijah believed she actually did. Mrs. Winters sighed, checking her watch. The shelter opens in an hour. We'll take him there, where he can be properly cared for. The shelter? Elijah repeated. But they might... It's a no-kill shelter, Mrs. Winters said firmly. Dr. Harmon's place. He's a good man. Elijah nodded numbly, kneeling to wrap his arms around Scout one last time. The dog licked his cheek, as if trying to comfort him instead of the other way around. I'm sorry, Elijah whispered. I hope someone nice adopts you. The drive to Harmon Animal Sanctuary took 20 minutes through slushy streets. Mrs. Winters, surprisingly gentle, allowed Elijah to hold Scout on his lap the entire way. When they arrived, the building looked nothing like Elijah had imagined. No sterile concrete blocks or metal cages visible from outside, but a converted Victorian house with a fenced yard where several dogs played, despite the cold. Dr. Akitapari and Army were Damonton. Harmon himself met them at the door, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and glasses that magnified kind eyes. He knelt immediately to Scout's level, examining him with gentle hands while Elijah watched anxiously. You've done a good job caring for him, Doctor, Harmon said, glancing up at Elijah with a smile. He was malnourished, but he's on the mend. You may have saved his life. Pride warmed Elijah's chest, momentarily displacing his sadness. His name is Scout. Scout. Dr. Bissarar 1 Harmon repeated. A good name. Would you like to help me get him settled? We should run some tests. Make sure he doesn't have any other health issues. To Elijah's astonishment, Mrs. Winters nodded permission. I have errands to run. I can pick you up in 2 hours if that's acceptable, Doctor. Perfectly fine. Doctor, Harmon assured her, Elijah will be a big help. Those 2 hours changed everything. Doctor, Harmon didn't treat Elijah like a child, but as a collaborator, explaining each test and procedure as they cared for Scout. The sanctuary housed not only dogs, but cats, rabbits, and even a 3-legged goat named Ferdinand, who roamed freely through certain areas of the house. This isn't like any shelter I've heard about. Elijah observed as they settled Scout into a comfortable enclosure with a real bed and toys. We're different by design. Doctor, Harmon agreed. My wife Mariana and I started this place 15 years ago. We believe animals deserve dignity while they wait for their forever homes. He paused, studying Elijah. You have a natural way with them. Scout trusts you completely. A compliment was such a rare thing in Elijah's life that he didn't know how to respond. He focused on adjusting Scout's blanket instead. Would you like to volunteer here? Doctor, Harmon asked suddenly. We could arrange with St. Catherine's for you to come weekends, maybe after school sometimes. You could check on Scout, help with the other animals. Elijah's head snapped up. Really? You'd let me? Let you? Doctor. Harmon laughed. I'd be grateful for the help. Young people with your intuition for animal care are rare. When Mrs. Winters returned, Doctor, Harmon made his proposal. To Elijah's amazement, she agreed almost immediately. It would be good for him to have a constructive activity, she said, as if Elijah weren't standing right there. Too many of our older children have too much time to dwell on their circumstances. And so began a new chapter. Twice a week after school and every Saturday, Elijah took the bus to Harmon Animal Sanctuary. Scout thrived under the proper care, his coat growing glossy, his body filling out. Doctor, Harmon's wife Mariana, a warm woman with laugh lines and prematurely silver hair, taught Elijah about animal nutrition and behavior. For the first time since entering the foster system at age 7, Elijah felt something like purpose. The hollow space inside him didn't exactly fill, but it became less consuming. He still carried the weight of his history, parents unknown, left at a fire station with only a blue baby blanket and a first name scrawled on a note. But now he had somewhere to direct his capacity for care. 3 months passed in this new routine. Spring arrived, melting the last remnants of winter and bringing a surge of activity to the sanctuary as kitten season began. Elijah became indispensable, particularly with the bottle babies who needed feeding every 2 hours. You have healer's hands, Mariana told him one afternoon as they watched a fragile kitten finally latch onto a bottle Elijah had patiently coaxed into its mouth after others had failed. Gentle but confident, the praise made him uncomfortable but pleased. Every compliment was stored away carefully, like treasures he could revisit during darker moments at St. Catherine's, where he remained largely invisible, too old for the couples seeking young children, too quiet for the staff to notice much beyond his completed chores and decent grades. One Saturday in late April, Elijah arrived at the sanctuary to find unusual activity. A professional photographer setting up equipment in the main visitation room, Mariana arranging flowers, and Dr. Harmon looking uncommonly nervous in a button-down shirt instead of his usual scrubs. "What's happening?" Elijah asked, dropping his backpack by the door. "Fundraising photo shoot, Dr. Harmon explained. "The Harrison Foundation is considering us for a major grant, but they want promotional materials first. Photos of the animals, the facility, our community programs." Elijah nodded, understanding the stakes. The sanctuary operated on donations and the Harmon's veterinary income. A grant could mean better equipment, more space, perhaps even staff to help with the constant workload. "Friend, where do you need me?" he asked, already rolling up his sleeves. "Could you bring the healing success stories to the garden area?" Mariana requested. "Scout, Ferdinand, Daisy, and maybe the orange tabby triplets." The photographer wants before and after narratives. Scout had become the unofficial mascot of the sanctuary, his transformation from starving stray to handsome, healthy dog so dramatic that visitors often gasped when shown his intake photos. He followed Elijah everywhere when he was at the sanctuary, no longer needing a leash even in the open areas. The photo shoot progressed smoothly, animals cooperating as if sensing the importance. The photographer, a woman named Lindsay with a gentle touch and seemingly endless patience, captured image after image of rescued animals with their caretakers. "Elijah, we'd like some of you with Scout." "Dr. Harmon called. "You're as much his success story as he is yours." Feeling self-conscious but unwilling to disappoint, Elijah knelt beside Scout in the gardens. The dog immediately pressed against him, head tilted up adoringly. "Perfect," Lindsay exclaimed, camera clicking rapidly. "The connection between you two is incredible. Can you tell me how you found him?" As Elijah recounted the story, Lindsay continued shooting. Then, lowering her camera suddenly, she stared at Elijah with an odd intensity. "Sorry," she said, blinking rapidly. For a moment you reminded me of someone. The way you tilted your head just then." Elijah shifted uncomfortably, used to being forgettable rather than reminiscent of anyone. "I should get back to the kittens," he said, standing quickly. Lindsay seemed about to say something else but was distracted by Dr. Harmon calling her to photograph the aviary. The moment passed and Elijah returned to his duties, pushing away the strange interaction. 2 weeks later, Elijah arrived at the sanctuary to find Mariana waiting for him at the door, her expression a mixture of excitement and something he couldn't identify. "The photos turned out beautifully," she said, ushering him inside. "Lindsay sent them yesterday, and we've already submitted everything to the Harrison Foundation. But there's something else." She hesitated, exchanging a look with Dr. Harmon, who had appeared from his office. The gravity of their expressions sent a chill through Elijah. "Is something wrong with Scout?" he asked immediately. No, Dr. Harmon assured him. "Scout is perfectly healthy. This is about Lindsay, the photographer. She couldn't stop thinking about you after the photo shoot." Mariana continued. "Specifically how familiar you look to her. She has a sister, Catherine, who lost a child 12 years ago." The world seemed to tilt slightly beneath Elijah's feet. 12 years. His age. Lost. How? He managed to ask, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "Doctor, admire savoir d'orinon." Harmon's voice was gentle but direct. Their car was stolen from a gas station with the baby still inside. The car was recovered, but the baby, a boy, was gone. "Why are you telling me this?" Elijah whispered, though something deep inside him already recognized the truth humming through his bones. Lindsay looked into the records of missing children from that time period, Mariana said, her eyes never leaving his face. She found the original police reports, the search details. The baby was wearing distinctive handmade booties, blue ones with a pattern of small anchors. Elijah's breath caught. His most treasured possession, kept hidden beneath his mattress at St. Catherine's, was a small square of blue fabric with tiny anchors, the only fragment remaining of the blanket he'd been found in, the rest having disintegrated years ago from constant handling. "This doesn't necessarily mean anything," Dr. Harmon said carefully. "But Lindsay asked if you would consent to a DNA test. Her sister Catherine and brother-in-law Michael never stopped searching for their son." The room seemed to spin. Elijah gripped the edge of a nearby chair, focusing on its solidity. "They want to find him?" Still, after all this time, they never gave up hope. Mariana confirmed, tears welling in her eyes. They still celebrate his birthday every year. They still have his nursery, though they've updated it as he would have grown. Hope, that dangerous, painful emotion Elijah had learned to suppress, flared to life in his chest. He tried to tamp it down, knowing the statistical improbability, the likelihood of disappointment. What if it's not me? He asked, voicing his greatest fear. Doctor? Harmon placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Then you'll continue being the extraordinary young man you are, with people who care about you. Us included. 2 days later, a simple cheek swab. 2 agonizing weeks of waiting, of telling himself not to hope, of failing entirely at that impossible task. Scout seemed to sense his anxiety, staying closer than usual during Elijah's sanctuary visits, pressing against his leg whenever he stood still for too long. The call came on a Tuesday evening. Mrs. Winters summoned Elijah to her office, her expression unreadable as she handed him the phone. Elijah, doctor. Harmon's voice sounded thick with emotion. The results came back. I'm here with Lindsay and Catherine and Michael Harrison. Harrison, the name of the foundation considering the grant. The pieces clicked into place in Elijah's mind. It's a match, son. 100% certainty. You are Ethan James Harrison, born May 12th, 12 years ago. The world stopped. Started again. Realigned itself around this new reality. They want to meet you, doctor. Harmon continued. Tomorrow, if possible. They've waited 12 years for this moment. Words failed him completely. Mrs. Winters, watching his face, seemed to understand what had happened. For the first time in his memory, she reached out and squeezed his hand. The meeting was arranged for the sanctuary, neutral ground where Elijah felt safe, with Scout by his side and the Harmons nearby. He arrived early, unable to sleep or eat, his body humming with a mixture of terror and longing. When a black SUV pulled into the driveway, Elijah nearly bolted. Only Scout's solid presence against his leg kept him grounded. They emerged slowly, first Lindsay, the photographer, then a tall man with dark hair threaded with gray, his movements careful as if afraid of startling a wild animal. Behind him came a woman with honey blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face pale but determined. Catherine and Michael Harrison, his birth parents. The moment Catherine saw him, she stopped walking, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears spilled immediately down her cheeks. Michael steadied her with an arm around her waist, his own eyes shining wetly. Ethan, Catherine whispered. Just that, just his birth name, spoken with such love, such grief and joy tangled together that Elijah felt it like a physical touch. No one moved for several heartbeats. Then Scout, seemingly understanding what was needed, gently nudged Elijah forward. One step, another. Catherine mirrored his movements until they stood 3 feet apart. You have my father's eyes, she said softly. Your grandfather's. I knew it when I saw Lindsay's photos, but seeing you in person, can I? Michael started, his voice breaking. May I show you something? Elijah nodded, not trusting his own voice. Michael carefully removed his wallet, extracting a worn photograph. He held it out, and Elijah took it with trembling fingers. A baby himself cradled in Catherine's arms. Michael beside them on a hospital bed, both new parents gazing at their child with expressions of wonder. You were exactly 1 hour old in that picture, Michael said. The happiest moment of our lives. Something broke inside Elijah then. A dam holding back 12 years of loneliness, of wondering why he hadn't been enough to keep. A sob tore from his throat, and suddenly Catherine was there. Arms wrapping around him, her tears wetting his hair as she cradled him against her. We never stopped looking, she whispered fiercely. Never stopped loving you. Someone took you from us, but we never ever gave you up. Michael's arms encircled them both, his larger frame shaking with silent sobs. They stood locked together, the family circle closed after 12 years broken apart. Eventually, they moved inside, where the Harmons had prepared a private space for them to talk. The story emerged in pieces. A normal day, a gas station stop, Catherine running inside to pay while Michael used the restroom. 30 seconds of inattention. A car thief who hadn't realized a baby was in the back seat. The abandoned vehicle found hours later, empty. The police thought you had probably been left at a hospital or fire station by the thief once he realized you were there. Michael explained. We checked every safe haven drop in a 100-mile radius, but different county, Elijah said softly. Different state even. The note with my name. What name? Catherine asked. What did it say? Just Elijah, that's all. Everyone thought I had been abandoned. That nobody wanted me. Catherine made a sound of pure pain. We named you Ethan James Harrison, after both our fathers. We wanted you more than anything in this world. Scout, who had remained pressed against Elijah's leg throughout the conversation, suddenly raised his head and licked the boy's hand, as if offering comfort. Catherine noticed the gesture with a watery smile. Doctor is so winas, Sereno aren't. Harmon told us how you found each other, she said. How you saved him. Elijah stroked Scout's head. He saved me too, he said simply. The conversation continued for hours. Catherine and Michael eager for every detail of his life, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. They never rushed him, never pushed beyond what he seemed comfortable sharing. When he spoke of harder times, foster homes before St. E, Catherine's bullies, nights spent crying silently into his pillow, they listened with deep attention, their hands often reaching unconsciously to touch his arm, his shoulder, as if reassuring themselves he was really there. As afternoon faded toward evening, the inevitable question arose. We want you to come home with us, Michael said, his voice steady but vulnerable. Back to where you belong. But we understand this is overwhelming, and you might need time. Elijah looked between these two strangers, who were also, somehow, the most familiar people he'd ever met. Where do you live? About 40 minutes from here, Catherine answered. We never moved in case somehow you found your way back and remembered the house. The thought that they had oriented their entire lives around the empty space he had left struck Elijah with physical force. No one had ever wanted him so completely. What about Scout? He asked, the question revealing his inclination more clearly than a direct answer could have. Catherine and Michael exchanged glances, a silent communication flowing between them. He comes too, of course, Michael said without hesitation. He's part of the family now. Family. The word Elijah had stopped allowing himself to even think. I'd like to go home, he said finally, the words feeling strange and wonderful in his mouth. With Scout, and ... And with you. Catherine's brilliant smile illuminated her entire face. We've kept your room ready, she said, though we've updated it as you would have grown. It might not be to your taste now, but we can change anything you don't like. We have grandparents waiting to meet you, Michael added. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who've held you in their hearts all these years. The administrative process was surprisingly swift, given the DNA evidence and the high-profile nature of the original kidnapping. Mrs. Winters, displaying more emotion than Elijah had witnessed in 5 years, helped gather his few belongings from St. Catherine's. Some of the younger children cried at his departure, particularly those he had tutored in reading. He promised to return and visit, a promise the Harrisons immediately supported. The sanctuary too, Catherine assured him. As often as you want, Doctor, Harmon and Mariani have been part of the miracle that brought you back to us. The drive to his new old home passed in a blur of sensations. Scout's warm weight against his side in the back seat, Catherine turning frequently to look at him as if afraid he might disappear. Michael pointing out landmarks from the driver's seat with barely contained joy. There's the park where we used to walk when your mom was pregnant with you, he said, indicating a green space with towering oak trees. And that's your elementary school. Would have been, I mean. Will be now if you want. They turned onto a quiet street lined with mature trees, pulling into the driveway of a 2-story colonial with blue shutters. A basketball hoop stood over the garage, the net new, but the backboard weathered. I put that up when you were 2 months old, Michael said, following Elijah's gaze. Your mom said I was getting ahead of myself. I said he could at least wait until you could hold your head up on your own. Catherine corrected with a soft laugh. As they approached the front door, Elijah noticed a small camera above the entryway. Michael saw his observation and explained quietly, security system. After what happened, we became cautious. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and something baking. Your grandmother, Catherine explained. My mom, she stress bakes. She's been in the kitchen since we called her with the news. An older woman appeared in the hallway, her hands covered in flour, eyes red-rimmed but bright. She made an inarticulate sound at the sight of Elijah, then rushed forward, stopping just short of embracing him. May I? She asked, voice quavering. I'm your Grandma Susan. Elijah nodded and found himself enveloped in a cloud of vanilla extract in warm arms. Look at you, she whispered. Just look at you, all grown up and so handsome. More relatives arrived throughout the evening. Michael's parents, 2 aunts with their families, a great uncle who had coordinated volunteer search parties 12 years earlier. Each greeted Elijah with varying degrees of emotion, but all with the same underlying message. You were never forgotten, never unwanted, never unloved. Scout, initially overwhelmed by the crowd, adapted beautifully, accepting treats and ear scratches with diplomatic grace. By evening's end, he had claimed a spot on the living room rug, as if he'd always belonged there. When the last visitors departed, promising to return soon, Elijah found himself standing in a bedroom that simultaneously felt foreign and strangely familiar. The walls were a soft blue, the furniture clearly chosen for a boy his age. A bookshelf held volumes ranging from picture books to middle-grade novels, chronicling the years of his absence. On the desk sat a framed photograph, the same one Michael had shown him earlier, of his first hour of life. "We can change anything you don't like," Catherine said from the doorway, echoing her earlier words. "Make it yours again." Elijah ran his hand over the quilt covering the bed. "Who made this?" he asked. "I did," she admitted. "One square each year on your birthday." It helped to do something tangible. 12 squares, he realized, looking at the pattern. 12 years of longing sewn into fabric. "I like it," he said simply. "I like all of it." Catherine stepped into the room, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "Ethan, or would you prefer Elijah? We can call you whichever feels right to you." He considered this, the two names representing different parts of himself. "Maybe both? Ethan, Elijah? I've been Elijah so long it's who I am. But Ethan is who I was supposed to be." Ethan Elijah Harrison. Catherine tested the name, smiling. Perfect. That night, lying in his new bed with Scout curled at his feet, Elijah, now also Ethan, stared at the ceiling where glow-in-the-dark stars formed constellations. The house creaked and settled around him, unfamiliar sounds that somehow held no threat. Down the hall, he knew Catherine and Michael slept, or perhaps lay awake like him, marveling at the impossible turn their lives had taken. He thought of the simple act that had led him here, sharing his meager lunch with a hungry dog. How that moment of kindness had spiraled outward, touching life after life until it circled back to him, delivering him to the very people who had been searching for him all along. In the darkness, he whispered to Scout, "I never imagined any of this." The dog's tail thumped against the blanket in sleepy response. Tomorrow would bring more adjustments, more overwhelming emotions, more strangers who were also family. School arrangements, therapy appointments, legal proceedings to fully restore his identity. The journey ahead would not always be smooth. 12 years of separation had left marks on all of them that would need time to heal. But tonight, for the first time since he could remember, the hollow space inside him had begun to fill with something warm and sustaining. Not just the knowledge that he was wanted, though that was profound enough. Something deeper, the understanding that connection, whether to a stray dog or long-lost family, was the true shelter from life's harshest elements. As sleep finally claimed him, his last conscious thought was gratitude. For Scout, for second chances, and for the mysterious ways kindness eventually finds its way home.